Joe Doyle of Prospects Live joins the show to talk Mariners offseason, the 2023 MLB draft, and a whole lot more. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is Thursday, December 15th, 2022. This is Titan Gonzalez for the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. The link as well as our social accounts is in the description below. I spoke with Joe Doyle of Prospects Live to discuss what the Mariners have done this offseason, what they still need to do before spring training, how we should value their competitive balance round A selection, and a whole lot more. Here's what Joe had to say. Joe Doyle is the director for everything MLB draft related over at Prospects Live, and he joins us now on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Joe, long time no see. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. It's been a minute since I've been on your show. I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Really excited about doing this. Been wanting to get you on the show for a while, and then you and I were chatting in the DMs like last week, a couple weeks ago, and I was just like, hey, come on the show. Would love to have you. So
hey, man. How you been?
Yeah. So yeah, great to have you on. Let's I'm just going to ask you a general question here to get the ball rolling here. What are your thoughts on the Mariners offseason thus far, and where would you like to see them go from here?
Oh man. That's a big question these days. My thoughts on the Mariners offseason. So, I would say that they are a right-handed hitting left fielder away from having a markedly better team than what they had in 2022. So in that regard, I think they have done well. Some of the contracts that have been doled out to free agents have been, I think, a surprise to everyone with some of the money that's been thrown out there.
Yep.
But in general, I think, I'm a fan of the Mariners offseason in that they've clearly gotten better. They've addressed some needs, and listen, we can go back and forth on the sustainability model until the cows come home, but altogether, I think Seattle's a better team than they were 4 months ago, and I think that's a positive.
And I think also, you look at what the rest of the league is doing, like the American League hasn't gotten better, really. Most of the free agents are signing with National League teams. The National League is just dominating this offseason overall. I put together a spreadsheet the other day, and I'm sure I missed a few deals, but just talking about the F4 2022 F4 retained or added by each league, it was like 71.9 for the National League and like 60.5 for the American League, and most of that is Judge, right? Judge was 11.4 on his own this past season. So yeah, I mean, like, for me personally, I still see the Mariners where I saw them at the end of the playoffs, where they were the second best team in the American League. I still think that's the case because that's really, like, I mean, one, they've added more certainty in right field with Teoscar Hernandez, and they got better at second base and Colton Wong as well, but also just the rest of the American League they haven't either closed the gap or taken that next step further either. So we'll see what the Mariners do from here. So what would you like to see them do from here, though? Like, what do they need to add? How do they need to finish this thing off before we get to spring training?
Yeah, we'll see if they hit on every mark, but a Will Myers or an AJ Pollock or something that you can put in left field to platoon off Jared Kelenic. You can't responsibly go into the 2023 season and expect Jared Kelenic to play against left-handed pitching. It won't. It's a white flag in that part of the order. I would like to see them do that. I'd like to see them bring in another established hitter, a thumper, someone that can rotate through the DH position because with Toro gone and some of the different pieces like Terren's no longer on the 40-man roster, I think there's room for a DH on the current bench that can be rotated through. And then I'm always a fan of Jerry and those analysts' abilities to find unique arms that provide something a little bit different than what the current bullpen construction has. So, going out and acquiring another reliever that can be used in the 6th, 7th inning, I think would really round out the team.
So I was going to ask you cake-related questions, but because Mariners Twitter ran that into the ground, I'm not going to even bother you with that. It's not.
What's funny
anymore,
about
guys.
that? What's funny about that is people totally the analogy was totally lost within like a half hour of it actually being out. The entire premise of it was not we should buy a brand new $500 million cake. All I was trying to say was let's judge the cake when the cake is out of the oven and frosted and iced.
Right.
Let's just not, there's no reason to freak out right now. So, but yeah, the the analogy was totally lost. Joe Vieira hung the banner and it was over.
Yeah, it was over at that point. Jeff Passan today or yesterday on 710 Seattle Sports referred to the Mariners fans as greedy and spoiled. I don't necessarily agree with that. I would just say impatient, which is to your point, right? It's just like, let's just wait till we get to spring training and then let's judge the final product. And, we'll decide then and there if the Mariners failed or succeeded in this offseason or just kind of stayed somewhere in between.
I would add, I think the Seattle Mariners are probably a better team than how they actually performed in 2022. I mean, you look at the lineup and their struggles to score runs. A lot of that was because of the fact that Ty France couldn't stay on the field and Mitch Haniger missed 3 months, and Tom Murphy went down with injuries, and you just go down the line. Like Adam Frazier underperformed, Eugenio Suarez broke his finger, J.P. Crawford regressed, Jared Kelenic didn't. Like, they were so injured and so mismatched all year. If you would have told me in February or March that Sam Haggerty was going to, have 350 plate appearances, or Toro was have 450 plate appearances, I'd be pretty concerned. I think if the offense can just stay a little bit more healthy this year, I do think it's truly a 92 to 93 win team, and now it's just a matter of kind of getting those guys to gel together. So,
and I
we'll
think
see.
the thing that gets lost on a lot of people too is that not only have you added Teoscar Hernandez and Colton Wong, but you're also getting a full season of Luis Castillo. You're getting a full season of George Kirby. You're getting a full season of post breakout Cal Raleigh and Andres Munoz. So, those things also have to factor in. And so the Mariners, even if they don't do anything from here on out, I think are clearly a better team than they were, by opening day than they were last opening day. And that's a good thing because then you just build upon that. But I think that they're even going to get better, right? Like there's no way that they're done at this point. So yeah. All right. Before we move on to draft stuff and the international signing period, because I have a lot that I want to ask you about that. Colby and I have been kicking around the idea about Lance Lynn the last week or so on the show. And overall, I think the White Sox really line up well with the Mariners as a trade partner because not only do they have Lynn, who's making quite a bit of money, is on the last couple of years of their deal, of his deal, and I have no idea what the White Sox are really doing right now. But they also have Lucas Giolito on the final year of his contract. They have all these arms in the bullpen like Aaron Bummer, and they reportedly are looking to get rid of Liam Hendriks' contract. And they have Kendall Graveman and they have Joe Kelly. So what do you think about the White Sox as a trade partner for the Mariners? And specifically, what do you think about the Lance Lynn idea or Lucas Giolito?
So I like the idea of both. I think I would probably prefer Lance Lynn over Lucas Giolito. I'm just not a big fan of rentals. That being said, I do think that Seattle as an organization is kind of undervalued in terms of the starting rotation. I think they're a lot closer to being a full rotation than a lot of people give them credit for. And that's even if you trade Chris Flexen. I mean, their 1 through 4 is the best in the American League from my eyes. Marco Gonzalez is a solid number 5. And beyond that, though, behind that, Emerson Hancock is going to be ready in May. And personally, I think Bryce Miller is a top 100 prospect in the game, and I would expect him to be the first call if someone were to get hurt. I've compared his stuff to Spencer Strider stuff. I'm not saying that he's going to be Spencer Strider. The slider isn't the same, but I would almost like if you're going to use those resources on anything, I would rather them use it on an offensive piece or a bullpen piece. Liam Hendriks would be great. But I think Bryce Miller, if you plug Bryce Miller into this rotation and use those resources elsewhere, I don't think the drop off between Bryce Miller and Lance Lynn is honestly going to be that drastic.
Gotcha.
But that's just my 2 cents. I mean, there's a number of ways to skin a cat. There's a number of ways to spend your money, and if we are operating under a budget, I would rather spend that money offensively.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. What do you think it would cost to land Lynn, especially when taking the money into account here?
I mean, 2 years of Lance Lynn, even though he was injured last year, is going to be pretty hefty. I I'm with you. I don't know where the White Sox go from here. I don't know what their plan would be.
Their
I would
roster is
ant
just it's constructed
It's
so
weird.
poorly, man. It's so bad.
Yeah, and it's Eloy Jimenez is porcelain. Luis Robert is looking pretty porcelain as well. But if I'm the White Sox, if you do believe this is your competitive window, which I think Rick Hahn has to believe this is his competitive window, I don't think you can trade. I don't think you can trade Lance Lynn. I
Mm.
would probably start with something like Emerson Hancock and Jonathan Clase, for example. Give them a little bit of athleticism and another starting pitcher. But that's a tough one. That's a tough one for me. I haven't given the Lance Lynn idea too much thought, and 2 years of Lance Lynn is not valueless.
You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Before we get back into my conversation with Joe, we have a message from the NHTSA. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. But nah, you live nearby. You can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds you'll get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you tow your car. What if you kill someone? Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. One of the assets that we've talked about a lot here for the Mariners via trade is that number 30 pick that you confirmed they now have. So now they have basically 3 first round picks, 3 top 30 picks. And that's the only one that's tradable, however, which, I mean, that can be valuable if you're looking to land someone like Lance Lynn potentially. But how should we value the number 30 pick? What is that actually worth in your mind? What is that? I don't know. This is probably not a great comp, but like, what would that replace in a trade package? Like, would that replace like a Taylor Dollard in a trade package? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think you're pretty much spot on. I think it's the equivalent of a top 90 to 150 prospect in the league. Like
Hmm.
for me, the 30th pick in the draft is kind of equatable to Bryce Miller. That being said, it has even inherently a little bit more value than that because it gives the team that's acquiring it the flexibility to use it however they want. It's not a fixed Bryce Miller. They can make it into whatever they want it to be. So um yeah, it's got a ton of value on the trade market. I don't know whether or not, Seattle is in a huge rush to include it in any trades, but if they did need to push a trade over the edge and they weren't willing to, part with a Cole Young, for example, the 30th pick in the draft certainly kind of holds a similar value.
The international signing period is coming up next month. Um, Felnin Celesten is obviously the biggest name that the Mariners are projected to sign. We've heard about him for a while now. Obviously, his entrance into the organization has been pushed back due to the pandemic and all that, and how the international signing period has been pushed back in general to January from July. So, can you tell us more about where he is right now? Because, I mean, the last time you and I talked a while ago, this was already pretty much set in stone that he was going to join the organization. There was talk that, whenever he, officially enters the organization, he's going to be the number 1 guy, or at least close there in the Mariners organization. Is that still the case, or have things changed with him? What's going on with Felnin Celesten?
Yeah, so I never viewed him as the top prospect in the organization. I know that the fanfare and pageantry around his name and the money being thrown his way has people automatically flocking to, oh, this is the next, Julio. He's going to be. Right now, I have him slotted him at number 4. I have him behind Cole Young, Bryce Miller, Harry Ford. At the end of the day, you're talking about a 17-year-old shortstop that hasn't played yet, and so I kind of want to see what it looks like after he plays. Um, So number 4 for me right now, he's 6'3", 180, 185 pounds. A lot of comps to Didi Gregorius right now, a little bit better defender than Didi Gregorius was. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I'm watching with Felnin is he's actually going to be on the older side for an international prospect entering into an organization.
Hmm.
He's going to be like 17 and a half, which is pretty
Hmm.
old for these international prospects. He turned 17 in September. So I'll be interested to see whether or not, if he performs at the DSL level early in the season, whether or not they give him a shot to play a little bit of ball in Arizona in like mid July. But yeah,
Hmm.
everything is still scored away. He'll sign on January 4th, I believe it is.
Gotcha.
January 15th. January 15th.
Gotcha. Anyone else that they're planning on signing that they're expected to sign that we should be keeping an eye on?
Yeah, so 2 right-handed pitchers that I've
Mm.
got right on the fringes of my top 30 prospects already. Jeter Martinez out of Mexico, he's gonna get over $1 million, which is significant. And then Dylan Wilson out of Curacao, another righty. Both of them are 6'3", 6'4", 180 pounds, big yakker breaking balls. Both of them have been up to 92, lean, slender bodies, good athletes on the mound. I think those are 2 guys that are kind of built from the same vein as Juan Pinto, but they're righties. I think you could see both of those guys in the top 15 to 20 prospects in the organization after 2023.
Ooh, that's nice. That's
Yeah.
good to hear. So, all right. So going back to the drafts, so that they have the 30th pick, they have the 29th pick, thanks to Julio winning Rookie of the Year. They also have the 22nd pick, which is just their native pick. Um, 3 top 30 picks, man. You basically,
Yeah.
I don't, considering that your first pick is at 22, you don't necessarily control the draft, but you're pretty close to doing that. So how do you expect, and obviously, the draft is still a far ways away. There's still a whole, college season, high school season that still has to be played and all that. But how do you expect them, or how do you foresee them, or maybe just how would you prefer them to maneuver this whole thing in the first round? And what would you like to see them do with that 22nd pick, given all the bonus pool money that they now have?
Yeah. So, I think, especially on Twitter, there's been a lot made of Seattle kind of manipulating the draft and floating a player down to 22 because they're going to have all this money. I think that's a lot more rare than people think. The Rangers did it this year by floating Brock Porter down by taking Kumar Rocker with the number 3 pick. But the Mets had the 11th and the 14th pick. They played it chalk, and I expect the Mariners to do the same. I think they would like more bites at the apple than throwing, you know, a ton of their bonus pool at the 10 or 12th best player, floating him down. So I would expect them to go with, if I were a betting man today, a couple of college players and a high school player with those top 3 picks. It's a really good year for college pitching. It's a really good year for college bats, and with
Hmm.
that many, you know, top players there in the top 40 picks or so, I think Seattle would just kind of like to trust their analysts and take 3 bites at the apple.
Um, so yeah, so you said a couple college guys and a high school guy, because like that's
Hmm.
the Mariners have, like, they went on a long trend of college arms, right? And then the last 2 years they've bucked that trend with high school guys. So you think it's just going to be a little bit of both, right? Like it's just there's not going to be really a trend or like something that they specify as just something that they focus on entirely at the top end of the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could tell you that they have a type, but ever since
Yeah.
Scott Hunter and Jerry DePoto have entered the picture, they've gone from college hitters to
Hmm.
college pitchers to now high school hitters. I mean, I think as an organization, Seattle is generally more risk averse, but then you see them selecting, overpaying high school pitchers in the second round and drafting an undersized high school catcher in the first round in 2021. I think they just kind of trust their eyes and go with who they think is the best player for them on the board. That being said, I think the last 2 years they've made a concerted effort to like refill the bucket, refill the lower levels. That way, in 2024, 2025, they've got all this ammunition coming up from that kind of teenage group. That level, especially with Felnin Celesten and Wilson and Martinez that I just mentioned, there's a lot of really, really good teenagers in this organization right now. So I think kind of where this organization does lack its depth is at that AA level, college hitters, college pitchers. And this is as good a year as any to kind of go into that bucket. So that, if they continue to take the tact of this is where we're light and we're
Mhm.
going to evaluate that type of player, I would expect the college ranks to be kind of an emphasis.
More from my conversation with Joe Doyle in just a moment, but real quick, a reminder this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and World Cup. We've got it all over at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts.
So what's your general feel for this class? I mean, again, there's still seasons to be played, but how good do you think it is right now? And who are some names that maybe we should keep an eye on for the Mariners? Because I know you've done a mock draft recently on Prospects Live. So who are you kind of looking at for them?
Yeah, it's like I had mentioned, it's a really good draft. It's good at the top. It's deep. I mean, this class is right now. I'd say there's kind of a drop off after like 45 or 50 names. There's some legitimate guys in this, and there are players in this class that Seattle has had a lot of success with in the past. Like the South Carolina pitcher Will Sanders, 6'6", 205 pounds, long, lean. That's the type of guy that I think Seattle would go after. He's been up to 97 already. He's got a diabolical changeup, and he can really spin a slider, even though it's been inconsistent. That's kind of what they've targeted in the past. But as you go up and down this list, I think fans will want to hear about college hitters. There's a shortstop at Stanford named Tommy Troy that I think makes a lot of sense. There's a shortstop third baseman at Miami named Yohandry Morales that I think makes a lot of sense. But I think for me personally, the value in this class is going to be on the college arm side. And if Seattle were to take 3 college arms or 2 college arms and a college hitter, 22 through 30, they're going to be really good players. They really are because, let's put it this way. It's the best draft I've seen since 2019. And whoever Seattle selects at 22 probably would have been a top 12 pick the last 3 seasons. It's that good.
So I'm a big fan of names, unique names, just in baseball. Just love some great baseball names. Colby and I even made an all-time name list on our Patreon show. So I'm wondering, because you've come through this class quite a bit, who are some great names in this class? Because I saw one that I really like, Lou James Groover III. That is a fantastic name. That is an amazing name. Do you have any others?
Yeah. So the James goes by Gino now. So more Gino in Seattle would be fitting in 2022. A little thing about Gino Groover, he went 59 for 99 this fall. He hit 600. So I would not be against the James Gino Groover. No. So a couple names I really like. Maui Ahuna is a shortstop at Tennessee. The player, there's some swing and miss. Like I don't buy into it huge, but that's just like living easy. That's just a chill name, Maui Ahuna. I'd put that on my all team name. Johnny Farmello is a high schooler out of Virginia. That just says Disney Channel in the early 2000s. I like Johnny Farmello.
I'm Johnny Farmello, and you're watching
Johnny
Disney
Farmello.
Channel.
That's right. Let's shred. That's a good one. There's a kid by the name of Ralphie Velasquez. Ralphie Velasquez in California. That's a good one too. So there's some good names in this class. Do you have anybody else in mind that you kind of sign up for?
I haven't found any. To be honest, especially at the top of the draft, it's kind of boring from a name standpoint.
It is.
It's pretty.
There's a lot of guys boring. From Texas.
yeah. Like Chase Dollander is a very unique name, but it's also like it's a 50. It's like it's a 50. It's not. It's James
it's
Groover
50 cents on the
though,
Dollander,
or even Gino Groover III is like a 65 to a 70 at least.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The third.
The third. That's
And he is
like that's what sends it over the top.
he would be Geno the third in Seattle right now too. It really there's a
That's
lot
right.
of simpatico there.
That's right. And dude, that's your selling point to him. Like if he's, if you're trying to work him down the board a little bit, maybe at your where's he supposed to go?
Right now we've got him in the second round, early second round.
All right, so if you're trying to work him down to your second round pick, right? You just say, "Hey man, it's pretty good being a Geno here in Seattle. Like,
Yeah.
come on, we'll throw you a couple of extra $1,000 here or $100,000 here, and let's make it happen." All right, so
Draft, develop, and Geno.
exactly. That's the new slogan here in Seattle.
Yeah. Let
all
Geno
right,
cook.
exactly. So, who are those bats that you got there in the background, or is that anyone in particular,
Oh.
or just bats?
Yeah, so I got a bunch of them. So Benny Montgomery signed a bat for us. He was a
Ooh.
draft pick by the Rockies
Love
2 or
Benny
3 years
Montgomery.
ago. Wes Kath was a second rounder for the White Sox. Jared Kelnick.
Oh, nice.
Jordan Lawler.
Love
And
Jordan
then,
Lawler.
I haven't hung this one up, but this is Zach Neto from the Angels.
Nice.
So,
Zach
yeah, I
Neto
mean, it's been cool.
Was a favorite of ours.
I love Zach Neto, and he's a good dude. It's been cool getting to know all these players and interviewing them and developing relationships with them over the last 4 years because they just these high school kids like they don't how would you say it? They don't take anything for granted. Like they truly appreciate the attention that you're paying to them and things like that. So it's just been cool kind of making some of those friendships. Henry
Yeah, that's
Davis
sick, man.
signed a ball for us back in the day, so
That's
cool.
sick, dude. Yeah, I've been watching your guys' interviews and stuff for a while with the prospects, and it's great, man. It's great to see. I mean, because the one thing with the MLB draft, right? And I'm sure you know this better than anyone, that it's not like the NFL draft and it's not like the NBA draft, and because those guys end up making an impact right away, and therefore with the MLB draft, most of these guys that get signed, they don't make an impact for 4 to 5 years, and a lot of them just don't make an impact at all, and therefore the fans don't have as much interest. But it's good to
Mhm.
see someone kind of putting a face to the names, getting people excited about this stuff, giving people reason to be excited about that stuff. It's great what you guys are doing over at Prospects Live. It's also great to hear you with Jason A. Churchill over on the Baseball Things podcast now, which I would wholly recommend to anyone listening right now to subscribe on Patreon. It's a great show, very informative show. And you get to listen to Joe talk about Dalton Varsho every single day. It's great.
Yeah, for years now. Dalton Varsho has been a talking point for years.
Now, he is possibly going to be on the move this offseason. The Astros have apparently checked in. What do you think about the Mariners and Varsho?
I feel like I can't give an unbiased answer to that question after all these years. The ironic thing, and I told Jason this on the show the other day, I really liked Dalton Varsho, and I really liked Dalton Varsho in like high A before he debuted and everything. And then it just kind of became this like running baseball things joke. And so now I don't have a clear head, but I think he'd be a great player to add to Seattle. I think he fits the team really well, and I think obviously this front office has made a point that versatility is valuable to them. I think right now this team needs a right-handed hitter more than they need a left-handed hitter. I could see Teoscar Hernandez being the DH, Varsho being in right field, Kelnick being in left field, and Julio in center field, but I just think the priority right now has to be a platoon for Kelnick first. And then once we have that, or once we're assured that we have that hole filled, then some of the luxuries like Varsho would make sense.
Gotcha. All right. Before we hop off of here, anything you want to plug? Anything you want to share with the folks? What do you got going on?
Doing baseball things like once a week has been a lot of fun. I'll be putting out my top 50 Mariners prospects probably on like January 16th after these guys sign. So you guys can look forward to that. But no, I mean, I would just say this. I'm never going to tell anyone how to fan, how to root, like how to enjoy Mariners baseball. But at the end of the day, like my message to everyone would just be like, enjoy it. this is a team that you're rooting for. It's a team that is going to be very good in 2023. And even if they don't end up with some of the, nice jewelry and luxuries that a lot of us were expecting going into the offseason, it's still a great time to be a Seattle Mariners fan.
It's awesome. Great way to put it. Thanks, Joe. Let's do it again sometime.
Sounds good, brother.
Thank you again to Joe for joining us here on the show, and thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. That's going to do it for our show today. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners, and you can follow me at Dane Gonzalez. It's DANEGNZLZ, and you can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen. Now, for your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, featuring the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts, just like us. And with that, have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.